Hello, this is Mr. McLeod. Welcome back. This is the second video on creating a subclass of DrawingTool. In the first video, we created this My Drawing Tool class, and we added the constructors that were originally in the drawing tool, and we just made them do the same thing, except they set the direction to 0 instead of 90 in the beginning. And then we overrode the set position. Sorry, we created a new method called set position. Let me clarify that. That allows us to just move the pin wherever we want without drawing lines between. And it preserves whether or not the pin is down. And then we also overrode the move method. So this one we actually changed an existing method. And we overrode it so that instead of changing the direction of the pin to point in whatever direction it needed to go to get to XY, it's going to instead maintain the same direction that it originally had. And so by doing that, that also means set position is also going to be preserving the direction because it calls move, right? Okay, so that's what we did in the first video. In this video, we're going to introduce mouse events. So to do mouse events, there's something you have to understand first about how all of this drawing tool system works. So if we go up to the drawing tool, you'll notice that there's this method here called getPadPanel, right? And this returns a sketchpad panel object for this drawing tool. And basically, like the sketchpad panel is the thing that we actually draw in, but it might not be very obvious to you, like what exactly is a sketchpad panel, because it's not in the API anymore. It doesn't, or anywhere, right? It doesn't say anywhere like what is this class, like what class does it inherit from, if it inherits from a class, or any of that, right? So it's kind of a mystery. So if you wanted to solve this mystery, we could actually find out by creating a class object representing the drawing tool. So right now, we could say pin, if we said pin dot get pad panel, then this would return a sketchpad panel. And then we need to get a class object of the sketchpad panel so that we can do reflection, which means we find out like what's in that class, right? So you can find out things about a class by getting access to a class object, right? So if we say dot get class, this is a method that every class has, and we can find that out by just going up here and let's do a little API digging. If we search for object class API, you'll see this is the class that every other class is a subclass of, which means that any methods in this class, every class will have, right? And you can see here, there's this get class method, and it returns a class object, right? And this class is basically a class that holds information about a class, right? So if we're calling this on the result of get pad panel, then we're basically getting a class object that has information about the sketchpad panel class, right? So down here, if we look at the methods that we can then call on the class object, you can see that you can find out things like, let's see, let's go down here. Okay. You could get name. So this would like be the name of the class. So if we called this, it would just return sketchpad panel. We could call get package and it would return like which package is this class in. And in this case, it would return, just to be clear, it's not a string that says what package. It's literally like another class called package that represents a package. It has information about the package. But the one that we're interested in here is that, check this out, there's this method called get superclass. If we called this, that would return the superclass, the class object representing the superclass of the pad panel. So we go over here, basically like this is the sketchpad panel, and then get superclass is whatever class sketchpad panel extends, right? So that's going to be just another class object, which means we could call methods in turn on that one and find out about it. But really, the only thing we need to know about it is what is it, right? Like what's the name of the class? And if you just call toString on a class object, it's going to print out a description that is basically like the full name of the class, including the package. So that would be the best thing to do here, is essentially print out the result of this. So if we say system.out.println, and we don't explicitly have to say .toString like we could, but we don't explicitly have to do that, because remember that if you pass an object to println, it will call toString on this object for you, right? So this is basically going to call toString on this mystery class object, and that's going to tell us what class it is, like what class it's representing, I should say. Okay, so let's go ahead and, oh, we need a semicolon there. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. So go over here and run the drawing tester, and yeah, it's going to draw some stuff, but what we're interested in is, what is it? Print. Okay, and there we go. It printed javax.swing.jpanel. So this looks like a kind of class that's in the Java library, and we could find out the API for this class, and then we're in business, right? So I'm just gonna literally copy paste that into Google, and here it is. It's a Jpanel, and a Jpanel is actually one of the main classes that you would use if you were creating a graphics program in Java using the Swing library. So there's multiple graphics libraries, and one of them is Swing. And so this is exactly the kind of thing we wanted to figure out, right? So now we know this is a Jpanel, and that means that because the superclass of sketchpad panel is a Jpanel, we can call any methods. So in here, whatever methods are in Jpanel, the sketchpad panel that we get when we call get pad panel, we could call any methods on that because it inherits all those methods. So let's look at the Jpanel. So here's a bunch of methods that it has. You can see that there's not that many, and that's because these are just the methods that only Jpanels have, right? That or methods that it's overridden. And then you'll see that this is a subclass of JComponent. Actually, technically, yeah, what is it? Yeah, so it's a subclass of JComponent. And then it also implements image observer, menu container, serializable, and accessible, right? So these are all interfaces that it implements. So that would mean it also has methods that it inherited from there. So now if you look down here, actually you can even see it inherited some fields from these as well, right? So there's like fields it inherited from JComponent, fields it inherited from component, from image observer. So it's inheriting a lot of different things, right? There's an unbelievable amount of methods here that it inherits from just JComponent, and then a whole nother set of methods it inherits from container, and then a whole another mess of methods from component, and then obviously from object as well. So since we're trying to get mouse events in this case, what we're going to be less interested in is anything that has to do with the mouse, right? So I can see down here under component, there's this add mouse listener, add mouse motion listener, add mouse wheel listener. These all look like the kind of thing that I'd be interested in if I want to respond to mouse events. And then there's also this add key listener, and that seems to be the kind of thing I'd like to look into if I want to respond to key events, right? So this is where we can start our investigation, right? As you progress in learning Java, you'll see that this kind of investigative, like API digging, is like a key part of learning how to do complex things. The better you are at reading the APIs and figuring out how to use all these classes, the better you'll get at creating complex programs in Java. Okay, so because I mean, I could have just told you that like, okay, these are the methods to call, and it kind of does that in the instructions, but I think it's very useful for you guys to see where do we find out, right? If you were just doing a new program and you were using some library we hadn't explicitly taught you how to use, how would you figure out how to use that library? Okay, and then just one more thing. It looks like there's this input method listener that could also potentially be interesting. But for now, these are the ones that we're gonna look into. All right, so I just want to create, first of all, something that responds to mouse events. So I'm just gonna go to this mouse listener and investigate, see what it is, okay? So if I call add mouse listener, then what this is gonna do is every time there's a mouse event in the window, like I click in the window that this anytime I click on this Jpanel, right, which is basically a sketchpad panel, it's going to go through its list of listeners, and it's going to call a method that is associated with that event, and it's going to pass information about that event to that mouse listener. Okay, so it looks like basically in order to be able to respond to, enable to have these methods called on a class, on an object, the object has to be of a class that implements mouse listener, right? So that it can be actually added to this list. So essentially what I would like to do is I would like, when I click on the window I would like it to call a method on my drawing tool, right? Like you want it to call methods on your pin. So in order to do that, I have to be able to add my pin to the Jpanel as a listener, right? So essentially I want to be able to say get pad panel dot add mouse listener, and I want to add this object, right? Like whatever object, whatever my drawing tool is being initialized, I want this one, right? Remember the keyword this, I want that this drawing tool to be added as a listener, right? So if I try to do that right now, it's going to tell me, wait, you can't do this because my drawing tool is not a mouse listener, right? But that's okay. We just need to go to mouse listener and investigate, well, what is this? And how can I be one, right? So this is an interface, right? So interfaces are nice because you can implement as many interfaces as you want, right? You can only extend one class, which means it's a good thing this is an interface, right? Because I can't make my drawing tool extend another class, but I can say implements mouse listener, and that way my drawing tool counts as a mouse listener, which would mean now it would be legal to pass it to the add mouse listener. Okay. Now I haven't finished with this yet because as soon as I write this, the first thing it's going to say is I don't even know what this mouse listener is, right? So we go up here, make this nicer. Okay, so we go up here and we see this mouse listener is in java.awt.event. So that means I need to import java.awt.event.mouse listener. Okay, so this is just the package. Okay, so for interfaces, it always does it this way. It tells you like which package is this in, and then it tells you the interface, right? Okay, so as soon as I do that, you'll notice that I still have an error, but now it's a different error, right? So now it says, wait, my drawing tool is not abstract and it does not override the abstract method mouse exited in java.awt.event mouse listener. Okay, so this is basically saying, since I said I promised I would implement this interface, as of right now, I'm breaking that promise because I didn't implement any of the methods that are in this interface, right? So if we go down here and we look at the method list, remember that an interface is essentially just a list of methods. So here's the methods, and I need to implement all of these. And so the error just basically like picked the first one that it saw that I didn't have. So apparently it checked mouse exited first and saw I wasn't implementing it. So bam, that's an error, right? If I added this one, if I implemented this one and that's it, then it would just complain about the next one, right? And so forth. So I actually need to implement all of them, even if I don't plan to do anything special for all of them. Essentially what I'm doing here when I say implements mouse listener is I'm promising that my drawing tool is going to have all these methods so that when the mouse does one of these actions in the Jpanel will be able to call mouse clicked or mouse entered or mouse exited or mouse pressed or mouse released on the pin, and the pin will have that method, right? It may not actually do anything, but it will successfully be able to call it. Okay, so down here at the bottom, I'm going to implementing, I'm just going to say, actually, I'll just say the name of it. Okay, so I'm going to say this is mouse listener methods, right? Okay, and then I'm going to take all these methods and I'm literally just going to like copy paste them all here. Of course, I'm copying a whole bunch of stuff I don't need, but I can just delete it, right? So get rid of this. And there we go. So we got, and notice that in interfaces, it doesn't say public here, but it goes without saying that every interface method is public, right? So when I declare it here though, in the class, it doesn't go without saying, because if I just say it like this would be saying it's package private. So I actually have to say public void mouse clicked, and it takes a mouse event, and then I could just have open close curly brace, and that's basically saying it does nothing, right? I mean, it's like this, right? Like the implementation is do nothing, right? And then same thing for each of these, right? I can say public void mouse entered, and notice each of these takes an object that is a mouse event. And this object is basically going to have a bunch of information about the event, right? Like the location of the mouse, if there were buttons pressed, like which buttons were pressed, that kind of thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this for all of these. So delete that, public void mouse exited, and delete that. And actually, for now, since I'm planning to do nothing in these, I'm actually gonna just to make it like easier to read and more obvious that like these ones do nothing. I'm literally just gonna like put them all in a one line, like open close curly brace, and then only the ones that I actually do stuff with, I'll open up the curly braces. Okay, so I think that looks nicer. So just my opinion. You can do whatever you want. Okay, let's get rid of this. All right, so we've now successfully said that we implement all these methods. However, you can see the next problem is that it's saying we take a mouse event, but we haven't imported this, right? So let's just go ahead and I'm just gonna like click this so it goes on another tab. And here's the class mouse event, and it is part of java.awt.event. So here's the full import. I'll just go up here and say import java.awt.event.mouse event. Technically, since we're going to do a lot of stuff with event in the event package, it would probably be fine to just say java.awt.event.star. The thing to watch out about that, the thing to be careful of about doing that though, is that there's a lot of methods, there's a lot of classes in java.awt.event. So you're importing a lot of classes and perhaps some of them might clash. Like they might have the same class name as another class that's in a different package. And if it turns out, this is very common for like mouse event type classes and like GUI, like graphic user interfaces classes, type classes. Like there's often like a window class in each graphic system, right? There's a mouse event class in each graphics system. So you have to be careful about importing all, because if you ever find out that you need, like maybe you need mouse event inside the java.awt.event, but then you need like some other class that's also in java.awt.event, but it's but you know it has the same name as a class in a different package, and you start getting in the habit of doing .star for everything, eventually you're going to have an issue, right? Like you're going to end up importing the wrong class. Okay, so I guess bottom line is I'm just going to import exactly what I need, and that's it. All right, so now that I've imported that, this all compiles. And probably the first thing you want to do to confirm that this is all working is I'm just going to have it print which mouse action it did each time I do a mouse action. So I've already added this get pad panel add mouse listener, and I passed my drawing tool object, like this, the one that got initialized here. So what I haven't done is do this for every constructor, right? So I need to make sure I do this for all the constructors. Otherwise, it will only work if I create the drawing tool, using the constructor that had it, right? Okay, so I've done that. Let's go ahead and test this out. So down here, I'm going to say system.out.println mouse clicked. And then I think it would be also nice if we at least took a simple look at like what kind of things can you find out from a mouse event. So we're in the mouse event class over here, and I'm scrolling down, and let's find the methods. Okay, here we go. So you can see you can find out things like which button, like if you want to detect double clicks, you could find out how many clicks it's on. So like you could actually say, oh, I only want to do something if it double clicks, right? And then if we go down here, probably the most common thing you're going to want is the X and the Y, right? And it looks like there's actually also a get point where you could just get the point, but I'm just going to go ahead and like get the X and the Y so that I know, and notice that this is the X and Y in the source component. So basically like in the Jpanel, which X, Y is this? Whereas get X on screen and get Y on screen is like, where is it like in the whole screen, right? So like if the Jpanel was over here and I clicked here, it would be the position based on the whole screen being the window, right? And this actually brings up something. When you get these events, the X and Y is going to be using a graphic system. It's going to be using the graphic system for Jpanels and for swing, basically, swing components. And the way that system works, the upper left corner is 0, 0. Okay, and then it increases going down for the Y direction. Okay, and it increases going to the right for the X direction. So that means like if you were to pass it, like if you were to click in the upper left corner here, it would find out like how far from the left edge is this. So like if this was 50, then this point would be 50, right? And then it would find out how far down. So like, let's say this was like 45. Then that means this point would be 50 for X and 45 for Y. Okay, and this is important to understand because this is not the same coordinate system as your drawing tool, right? So that same point in your drawing tool, if we were to draw the coordinate system for your drawing tool, 0, 0 is in the center, right? And let's actually do some real numbers here. So like, let's say that the width was like 200. Okay. And then, actually, wait, this kind of looks, yeah, that's fine. So let's say the width was like 200. And then let's say the height was like 400 or 300, let's say. Yeah, what am I doing? 300. Okay, so let's switch colors now. Okay, so that means if this is 0, 0, and this whole distance here is half of 200, that means like this whole distance is 100. Then if we were to draw this more accurately, actually, let's just change this. Like, this looks more like 20, right? Maybe 30. Let's say this is like 30, right? So just go back to the red color. Okay, so this is like 30. Okay. And this is, so then this would be like 30. And then, okay, if this is all 150, then maybe this could be, I mean, it looks actually like pretty close to the 30. So I'm just going to say this is like 35. Okay, so then that means this point, let's do the X here. So this point right here is 30, 35. But that means that if up to here is 30, then in our coordinate system in the drawing tool, to get from here to here has to be 70, right? Because together they have to add up to 100. Okay, so you're gonna have to do a little coordinate analysis, like conversion, to convert the place where the mouse was clicked into a position in the drawing tools like Sketchpad coordinate system, right? So this diagram that I did right here, and if you just did a little bit more analysis, you could probably solve this. You definitely can solve this. I'm not going to solve it for you. I'm just giving you kind of setting up the problem for you, and then you can think about how to actually get the position. But it's important to know that it's not going to be the same coordinate system, so you are going to have to do some kind of conversion. Okay, so in the meantime, I'm literally just going to say mouse clicked and then give the position, right? Like E is like the mouse event dot get X plus, I'll just have like a space plus E dot get Y. Okay, and then I'm gonna just do this for like each of these events. Let's see. Actually, yeah, let's do it. Okay. And then the only difference is I'm gonna say what it is, right? So this is mouse entered. Okay, and then this is mouse exited. This is mouse pressed. And this is mouse released. Okay, so a little bit of discussion about this actually. Mouse clicked is gonna get fired when you press down and release. So it essentially gets called at the same time that mouse released gets called. Whereas like mouse pressed gets called right when you press the mouse button down, but even before you've released it, right? So usually you'll use mouse pressed and mouse released together to like keep track of like when is the mouse down and then when has it been released. So if you wanted like more fine control of that, whereas mouse clicked is typically used in things like buttons, right? Where ultimately you just care when they released the mouse button, like where was it? And then entered and exited, I believe is going to get fired when you enter the object and exit it. So let's go ahead and find out. We can test this out and let's just run our tester. Probably don't need this anymore. Just run it. Okay, so now let's bring up our window because we're going to see what gets printed when. Okay, and check it out. As soon as I entered, it said mouse entered, and look at the coordinate. It's like 579, 160. Like if I go up here, and then check this out. When it exited, it told me when I exited as well. If I go up in the corner here, it'll be like 579.2, right? So you can see that that's pretty close to the top. And then actually, if you look at the numbers here, you can see that sometimes it actually will pass negative numbers. So be careful about that if you're trying to make sure everything's on screen. But you can see here down at the bottom, it's like 500, 500, because remember our coordinate, our whole thing was like 600 by 600. If we go over here to the other left edge, then notice that that's going to be like close to 0, right? Okay. So these are all just as soon as it enters, it gets called, right? If I click somewhere, then it should be a mouse clicked, right? And I just did one click and look what got called here. It called a mouse pressed and then a mouse released at the same place because I didn't move it. And then it also called mouse clicked at the same time that it called mouse released, right? Okay. So if you wanted to do something a little more interesting, which you are definitely going to want to, you could decide, okay, wherever I clicked, I'm going to draw a circle or something, right? So I could say, I want to draw a circle. But first, I need to get the pin there. So that's where our set position is going to come in handy. I can say set position, e.getx, e.getY, and then call draw circle. Just be aware that this e.getx and e.getY is going to be wrong, right? So it's actually, it'll be interesting to see here. Like, it's going to draw a circle not in the place that I clicked, but because the coordinate system, we haven't done the conversion yet, right? And then it'll draw a circle. Let's just say radius 50. And just in case the pin was up, let's go ahead and say pin dot down. I mean, it is going to be up. Oh wait, what am I doing? Just call down. Yeah. All right. So let's run this. Okay. So wherever I click, whenever I click, it tries to draw a circle. But check it out. Like when I was way over here, it was trying to draw a circle at 500 something, which is like way off screen if this is the coordinate system, right? Because the whole thing is only 600. And so that means the highest it can go is like 300, right? So notice it didn't actually draw a visible circle until I clicked over on like the left side, right? Okay, and then same thing like vertically as well, right? Okay, so let's go ahead, and that's good enough though to show you how you can get it to do stuff. There's some other mouse events that you're also going to want to respond to, but they're all pretty much like the same process. So I'll just show you like one more. So if we go back here, where was it? To, oh yeah. We go back here to, we had add mouse listener. We also might want an, let's go back one more. Okay, so we also wanted to add like mouse motion listener, because this one is going to be listening for events like when the mouse moves, right? So if you see what this is, you can see it has mouse dragged and mouse moved. Okay, so it's same kind of process as before. We go into our drawing tool and we need to import java.awt.event.mouse motion listener. And then this is where you can see when I was saying that classes can implement as many interfaces as they want. You can implement another interface by just saying comma and then mouse motion listener. And so now my drawing tool is going to implement mouse listener and also mouse motion listener, right? And if you have more, you just keep adding a comma and like adding more, right? Which you are going to have more because you're also going to want to listen to like keyboard events, and there's maybe some other mouse listener type events that you want. Like if you want to listen to the wheel, the mouse wheel, then that's like the mouse wheel listener. Okay, so for now, let's just do this one. So of course, it immediately says, hey, but you haven't actually implemented these methods. So let's go down here and we just need mouse dragged and mouse moved. So this process again is going to be the same. I'm just going to label this as like mouse motion listener methods. Okay, and here they are. Public void. Get rid of this. Okay, and then just for fun, let's go ahead and make this one the mouse dragged draw squares. So we're going to say set position to, again, this is going to be like the wrong position, but I'm going to leave it to you to fix that. Set position to e dot get x, e dot get y, and then let's do a filled. So let's do like fill rect. Let's do like, yeah, 50 by 50 is fine. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and say down, although you don't have to do this, like maybe you might want to make it so that it's possible to, yeah, you know what? Yeah, if the mouse is up, if the pin is up, it doesn't do anything, right? That's fine. Okay, so, and then mouse moved, the difference between mouse moved and mouse dragged is mouse dragged only gets fired when the mouse is moving and the button is down, whereas mouse moved gets fired anytime the mouse moves, even if the button is not down. Okay, so the last thing we need to do here is that we implemented the mouse motion listener, but we didn't tell my drawing tool to add it to the list of mouse motion listeners. So if I were to run this right now, it wouldn't do anything because I'm not, you know, you can't see, but I'm clicking and dragging and nothing's happening because the drawing tool is not on the list of listeners for mouse motion, right? So I have to go back here to the Jpanel, and you can see there was this add mouse motion listener. I need to actually call that, right? Just like I did here, I got get pad panel dot add mouse motion listener. And again, I want to pass this object so that anytime there's a mouse motion event, it calls the method on this object, right? I'm going to do that for all these constructors. Okay, so now that I'm actually listening, then this is going to actually call the methods. All right, so let's do this. Okay, so now if I'm dragging, you can see it's drawing squares. You can probably also see that it's not actually drawing the square where I dragged because we didn't do the conversion. So it's not the correct XY coordinate, okay? But again, that's a problem that you're gonna solve. If you solve it, then it'll look cool. It'll be just like drawing wherever you drag. Okay. I'm gonna stop right here for this video. If you want to find out more about how to do keyboard input, you can go to the next video. The process is pretty similar, but there is a few little catches and things that you need to know about for keyboard. So if you're getting stuck on it, you can definitely go to the next video and learn about keyboard movement. Goodbye, and possibly see you in the next video.